I'll take you through the current updates in terms of those packages under construction. There's 3 of them: K2 Ridge, Dardanelles, Linfield, Linfield Ashburton. And then briefly, let's touch on public stakeholder participation, and then also share briefly on the N2 package, what we're doing there and where we are with it. And then lastly, just to touch on skills development goals. And yeah, I think Tom did share with me some of the pointers in terms of the students and in terms of what type of background to share and so forth. So thanks, Tom. I did have to go back into archives and try and dig out some of the information and so forth as well. Okay, so I think if we start with the N3 corridor itself, so I think what you see in this slide is just the layout of the N3, Durban to Gauteng, you know, just roughly just over 500 kilometers in length. And you know, we always say the unique nature of this N3 corridor, unlike, you know, other major corridors, freight corridors, is that, you know, you have one of the biggest, busiest ports here down in the East Coast in Durban. And you have the economic hub sitting, you know, over 500 kilometers away. And I think it's the movement on this corridor between this fairly large distance and along the corridor, and the mix of passenger vehicles, the mix of accesses, the mix of developments, that makes it quite a challenge, you know, on what we need to do on the corridor. I think from SANRAL's perspective, just to ensure, you know, we have, in terms of some of our key pillars, road safety being one of them, the mobility being the other, and the third, which is critical, is just the road infrastructure itself and what we are able to provide to the public. Yeah, you'll see again some stats there, you know, 40% GDP, it's come downwards somewhat, you know, in Gauteng between 30-35%. The imports, yeah, between importing and exporting in South Africa. And then the last one, which is really, again, very critical on the corridor, is the split between freight traveling on road versus freight traveling on rail. And these stats were a bit different, and actually last night I had to go back and actually revise it further. So you see what I put there: more than 80% of freight is on the N3 and less than 20% on rail, which is again, you know, quite a concern for ourselves. The slide here, again, just more information on the corridor itself. So what you see in terms of the layout plan, the key map there, you know, what forms really the key backbone for this corridor in the dark green color is the N3 itself. What you see in the light blue shading is the NMPP fuel line that was commissioned a number of years back. And in the red line is the NATCO rail line, which again is a key rail line between Durban and Gauteng. And you can see, obviously, due to topography, how it moves around and follows for a bit the N3. But as you get, you know, interland, then it obviously takes a different route because of the requirement for meeting the minimum criteria, you know, for the rail line. So this is actually a slide from Transnet. So maybe just background as well in terms of the SIP program. So a number of years back, you know, as part of the National Development Plan, a number of these key strategic projects were identified. At the time, this particular corridor, which is the Durban Free State Gauteng logistics corridor, was termed SIP 2, Strategic Integrated Project 2, and so that's how it came into being. And through the various organizations like SANRAL, Transnet, the various municipalities, and so forth, that how the committees was put together sorry, excuse me. With Transnet being the coordinator for this particular SIP. So again, as part of National DOT's National Transport Master Plan, NatMap 2050, so this was developed many years back, and so the SIP program also talks to NatMap and in terms of the various infrastructure needs in terms of the roads master plan. I think key with the SIP project and SIP 2 is the economic growth and what was, you know, looked to be achieved versus, you know, currently where we are. You see, you know, way below the 1%. Key for this corridor is a requirement to reduce logistics and transport costs, and we know the cost of transport in South Africa is fairly high compared to the rest of the world. Again, increase global competitiveness, again trying to reduce costs and so forth. And what one of the other key requirements, and also really key to the NDP, is the creation of jobs and some of the social infrastructure where some of the jobs we're looking at for the economy can be created. And then key is the elimination of the bottlenecks along the corridor. And then what you see in the green boxes there, I'm not going to go through it, but just to say in terms of what the key economic benefits on this corridor in terms of impact on GDP. And again, being the busiest freight corridor, it has a direct impact on GDP. So anything that happens on the N3, for example, closure of the N3, really has some impact on the GDP and the growth of the economy. This is just a slide again about 2 years back, but I think it paints a picture in terms of really what's happening on the corridor. So in terms of the bar graph, Van Rieenen around midway on the N3, coming down to Durban, and what you see here is just the general daily traffic volumes, around 12,000 at Van Rieenen. And then as you get to Mooi River, starts to increase, and as you see, quite a sharp increase at Pietermaritzburg, around 45,000, and it's now close to say 47,000. And then and you see from Durban to from Maritzburg to Durban, then there's quite an exponential increase as you see all the way to Durban, and that's again a sign. And all those of us down in KZN that travel the N3 between Durban and Maritzburg, that it's very much a commuter route. We definitely got the peaks, but beside the peaks, I think generally daily throughout the day, there's fairly large volumes on the N3. And I think again, what the challenge is with the high freight volumes is this mix between passenger vehicles and freight vehicles. So again, what you'll see in the smaller bar graph is the volumes of heavy vehicles. And again, you'll see from Durban, so that day at EB Klutter, N2 and N3, around 7,000. But again, that's not the key link for the freight. It is the M7 joining the N3. And then between Pinetown, Marion Hill, and Pietermaritzburg, with the very high, volumes of heavy vehicles, over 9,000 vehicles a day. So just sharing in terms of the relationship that's there with lights and heavies. This one as well, I think, just to say in terms of planning. So, we commenced as far back as 2008, starting to look and see what we need to do, with the N3 at that stage already, in terms of our level of service triggers. For urban and rural freeways, generally urban level of service C, rural level of service D, and I think again as students in terms of volume capacity analysis, we understand the impact of that. When it gets too close to 1/1, and what really happens with the flow of traffic. So you'll see at 2010, it was still varying between. On the critical sections, between C and D, and we've come a long way since. And at that time, forecasting up to 2017, 22, so we did it in every 5-year increments. And why we chose 2017, because our plan then was at 2014 to actually commence construction and be complete by 2017, and then have a 30-year horizon beyond 2017 that took us to 2047. And that's how we came up with these different 5-year horizons up to 2022, 27, and so forth. But what you'll see here on this particular table is if we had left the N3 as it was, and in terms of the forecasted traffic, you'll see how the level of service and volume capacity ratios, changed. And, we at that time used between 2.5–3% growth rate, and light vehicles, and heavies was more around 3.5%, 4%. And that's how we got to to these PCU volumes. So we already now in 2021. So you can see already we quite far behind from our original planning, where we intended already to have these sections completed in terms of construction. One of the challenges was the funding and so forth, and us really going back and also re-looking in terms of looking long term, what we really need to do in terms of the N3. This is a more recent stats I thought it was interesting to share, especially now that we're in the COVID environment. So this is courtesy of our concessionaire and some of the work they're doing there. So the concession contract, which is I think the next slide, showing which part of the N3 toll concessionaire are involved in. But this is interesting. So if you look at the graph on the left top, the red graph, so that's either just traffic flows in terms of light vehicle volumes. Sorry.
Sure, boy.
Please keep your mics off, everybody. Mics off other than the speaker.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so if you see, look at the red graph on the left top, that just shows you the current to 2020 volumes, and in the shading at the back is the grey volumes from 2019. So what you'll see from let me just put this laser on here. Yeah, here. So you'll see, what happened at COVID lockdown level 5, and you can see a big dip in traffic. And during the period level 5, level 4, and the restrictions in travel, interprovincial, and so forth. And you'll see there was definitely an impact on the light vehicle stream. And then as we got towards August, September, again with lockdown levels changing and movement and so forth, and traffic, light vehicles were allowed to travel interprovincially. And then as we got to December, there was again a bit of a restriction. But as you see, beyond December, our traffic more or less started to try and catch up with the pre-COVID 2019 levels. Similar to with the heavy vehicles on this graph at the bottom, although not as severe, because as you would recall, so this is again level 5. You'll see the dip in the heavies, but the freight movement was more allowed to travel between provinces, and you'll see it was a very short period, May, June, when heavy vehicles continued. Again, there was some limitation and restriction, but as I said, more or less, it's volume starting to catch up with pre-2019. These two graphs on the right-hand side, again, these are just long-term forecasts. Again, looking again specifically here, you can see the dip in the light vehicles, and generally with the economists, looking at a 2-3 year period, as what you see here, forecasting where the pre-COVID levels they catch up prior to COVID, and then they again forecasting then through the for the future years. With the heavies, less impact, as you said, because of the lifted restriction for heavies allowed to travel. So I thought it was just interesting to share that. Again, there's a split on this on the N3 between Durban and Gauteng. So here, what we specifically looking at on the N3 is between Durban and Pietermaritzburg, about just over 80 kilometers. And then from Sidara to Heidelberg, it's the N3 toll concessionaire. So this concessionaire was let back many years ago, 1999, as you see there, 415 kilometers. And so, there's just a few years left in the concession, another 8 years, and there's a lot of upgrade works that have taken place over the years. And then on the slide is just the 3 key issues I needed to share. So beside the capacity issues, with lanes we have versus volumes of traffic, which we need to look at, or capacity upgrades. The 3 other specific key bottlenecks on the corridor, these 3 here you'll see. Van Riemen's, Townhill and Keyridge. And again, those of us familiar with driving on the N3 will note the issues around the steep gradients, the curvilinear alignment, and the super elevations and so forth, which results in why there's a lot of heavy vehicle accidents, losing of loads, and so forth on these 3 key bottlenecks that we need to look at addressing as well. So again, this is just a layout of the N3. So again, just on the corridor itself, these are just some pictures showing you the port itself, the container terminal. One of the key links, obviously, the current main port access is the M7. The challenges there once you get beyond the M7 into some of the local roads in the area, issues around congestion. Some of it is being addressed with the initiatives through the city and Transnet. These are just some more. I'll go through these very quickly because just being aware of the time. Again, these are just some shots showing you what's happening on the N3 with the heavy vehicle volumes, total volumes. When you have a small incident on the N3, or the traffic, queues up very, very quickly. And again, with some of these pictures, you can see the mix of the light and heavy vehicles. One of the ones here you'll see is a Marinil Toll Plaza. Again, those of us that travel it know that even by us creating this dedicated tag lane going both directions, which is on the inside lanes, there's a challenge in the morning, afternoon peaks getting to these lanes. Mainly because of the large volumes of traffic. So again, one of the upgrades we're looking at the plaza. Again, these are just some pictures at the bottom, Key Ridge being one of the key bottlenecks, as I indicated earlier. So I think overall the N3, it was originally constructed, early 60s, over 50 years ago already. So you can see it's really lasted what its original design life was for, in terms of lanes that were planned at that time and so forth. A later one was the mid-80s, the tall section, Paradise Valley to Key Ridge. But even that section now is getting to either at or beyond capacity. The dual section is 3 lanes from Durban to Cato Ridge, and then Cato Ridge to Pietermaritzburg, and that's obviously one of the really key restricted areas in terms of capacity, and that's how we phase the upgrades, and I'll share that with you. Again, as I said, SIP and the importance of why these projects are being undertaken through the SIP program. I'll discuss the issue about the congestion. Yeah, so I think I've got a 5-minute video, but let me just continue with the slides, and maybe time permitting at the end, I perhaps can play. It's a 5-minute video. I think they're also just giving an overall summary where we are with the N and the background to the N3. Yeah, so as I said, we commenced in 2008 with planning. So we're looking at the additional based on capacity analysis. So generally with SANRAL upgrades and looking at capacity analysis, while interchange we look at highway capacity manual. We've developed our internal highway traffic model, looking at follower density principles and so forth in terms of looking at freeway analysis. And so that's how we've come up with the lanes we require. Generally 2 lanes addition, so either 4 lanes on either side, 8-lane carriageway, and then where we got climbing lanes, it's getting to then possibly 5 lanes per direction. And then also we get into the urban areas, around eThekwini, Durban, and with some of the interchanges and closeness of the interchange spacings, where then there's a number of auxiliary lanes, especially from EB Kluter north-south, and from EB Kluter, coming west as well. So then the tall section I mentioned, the upgrading of that section, generally its upgrade consists of a concrete median barrier with the additional lanes on either side. Generally we gone for an asphalt or concrete surfacing, so from around Linfield back to Pietermaritzburg, it's a concrete pavement. And again, if you can understand over the period of time we require to look at our designs, as well as the volumes of hazies forecasted over that period, some of these design guidelines and our forecasts in terms of design loads were like beyond those limits. So there were lots of new ways of how we've looked at these principles of designs and so forth. So generally a concrete pavement, and then on the asphalt side, again looking at the high modulus asphalt on the bases for the asphalt sections, and then with the surfacing functional layer, providing more in terms of noise mitigation measures, and also very important in terms of cross drainage as well for that. Yeah, then the number of interchanges on the N3, or 20 interchanges. I know there was a question about number of bridges being constructed, and you can see there 95 overpasses, underpasses, a lot of culverts requiring to be extended. We're looking at the ring road. There's a slide I'll share with you. Key Ridge realignment, and then yeah, and so again, because of the length of it, we had to really look at it in terms of reasonably sized package. And when I say reasonable, it's not, again, reasonable in terms of how we generally look at past projects we've done, for upgrades. When we say reasonable here, even if it's a 3 or 4 kilometer section, the values of these contracts are still like in excess of $1 billion. So they're still very, very large contracts. And you can see, between 36, 42 month contracts, again, on some of them being larger periods, that like EB Clutter being in the order of 5-year contract, 60 months. So these are just a layout of the packages. Okay, and then the program. So just then talks to that layout in terms of where these different packages are situated. Package A is EB Clutter itself. And then all the way moving back towards Pietermaritzburg. So as I said, you'll see the lengths of them, varies between 6 kilometers. The one long there is the 11 kilometer Marion Hill Key Ridge. And when we're still looking at to see whether we split that or not, because it's fairly large in value. And these are all the structures indicated there. The durations are shown. And so I think just to share program wise, so what you see in the blue shading is our first phase, what we went out to tender on. So H, I, and J, Cato Ridge to Ashburton, those 3 packages currently under construction. You'll see they commence early this year, and you'll see the durations, and from that we'll know when we're likely to finish, 4 to 5 years. And then the last bottom 2 in blue there, the crushing. So we had a separate crushing contract to supply material to supplement the commercial facilities able to supply the corridor. Key issue here was the ability, because in the space of time we have to do these upgrades, the ability for these commercial suppliers to supply, for one, and two, for us in terms of the economies of scale, that we are able as SANRAL to have a separate SANRAL and a quarry contract close to the N3, able to supply these different contracts as well, and then a temporary barrier contract as well. So those are the ones, and then in orange you'll see that's the second phase. So the second phase out of those, K and L, Ashburton to New England, those 2 packages, tenders have closed. We're busy in evaluation, and then you can see we're hoping to award before this calendar year for those 2. So all in all, before perhaps the second bullet below the table, we'll have 7 projects on the N3 under construction with a total value in the order of 8.5 billion before our financial year end, which is March. And then the PMB Ring Road, an estimate given there, but that's still a few years' time. N3, okay, so this is the rollout in terms, again, from the table showing you the durations. So maybe the key thing to share here is, while they start at different periods, you'll see around mid-2022, next year, where you're going to see a number of these packages. Then if you draw a line down the bottom there, a lot of these projects under construction. And for us, that's again a big issue around the impact of traffic on the N3 and coming up, and looking at alternatives, how to best manage the traffic. Okay, just briefly to some of the packages, EB Clutter, again, not to share too much, but again, this is really an innovative solution that the consultant came up with. Was a design competition we had at those early years, looking how best to upgrade EB Clutter, trying to retain what's there, and the solution was to get lanes in all these ramps, an additional single lane to dual lanes, remove a support, that actually supports this entire interchange, and the restriction was one of the supports limiting us to expand, and to then remove that support and get that support, can I say, for that A-frame structure, then supported from an arch, and with these hanging tendons from the top that then supports the entire interchange. So that's really innovative. And I know one of the pre-questions was, where we are with our industry in terms of the challenges over the last few years. And I always say, I think as an industry, we should be very proud of projects we've done in the past, like Amgeni, like Mount Edgecombe, and so forth. And, both, I think, from a consultant and contractor fraternity, and what we can produce as an industry. So these are just some shots showing you what the upgraded EB Clutter would look like. Then as we continue on the N3 from EB Clutter, this is just there at Spine Road interchange. at Westwell. Again, the plan here is to remove the existing interchange structure, so it allows us to add lanes on the N3. There were restrictions with the piers, so we need a much thinner deck because of clearances, and then the design calls or requires that we put a network arch, which allows for a very slender deck. So this is also very innovative. There's the first one recently down in the Cape, and I'm sure some of you are aware of it. So there's another two we have on this N2, N3 program. So that's that one. Again, this one, a very busy slide with a lot of lines. So again, this is M13, N3 interchange, where it joins, M13 joins N3 going into Durban. So yeah, again, just to share, that's come from the Durban side going to Maritzburg. N3, you go off the M13 ramp going into Pinetown. So for us, traffic here, 50% of the traffic joins and leaves the N3 at this junction. So again, really critical, and again is quite a bottleneck in terms of queuing and backup of traffic. So we've really looked at a number of new interchange bridges. Yes, I think out of 6-7 new structures required there. Marine Toll Plaza, this is just the viaduct. Again, we don't get a sense of these structures, traveling on the N3. As you leave the plaza going up the hill, this is the Marine Viaduct of 400 kilometers in length, in the order of 40 meters in height, as you can see here. So you can see quite a challenge how we upgrade, close the median and widen. And the plan is then to close the median and then to widen on that side of the northbound. Again, very challenging, and we're working in a nature reserve as well. So yeah, very restricted conditions. Again, I thought this was very good to share. Again, this is from the Key Ridge package, Key Ridge to Hammersdale. So coming from Durban, going down to bottom of Key Ridge. So what you see here, if I can show with the mouse, that's the existing N3. That's the upgraded N3, where we've flattened some of the horizontal curves to get the minimum desired requirement in terms of what we need for the upgrading. You'll see that's the existing N3 there, and then the new southbound is between the two carriageways with the wide and median we have currently there. It more or less ties in back to where this truck stop is on the N3. And then it more or less follows the N3, but obviously we widen a totally new median, and again quite a big level difference between both carriageways. And then what's critical is the N3, the existing N3 follows that alignment there. Big issue here about the heavy vehicles and what is where the key bottleneck is. So this alignment now is a straight alignment across the valley, going right across and then tying it back there to the N3, which is where we've recently upgraded the Hammersdale interchange. Again, there's one major viaduct here and the other one, which is also quite large, over 80 meters. But this is close to 400 meters. And again, this is just giving you some perspective of what the viaduct looks like. And I must say again, with technology, what we can do with 3D modeling and information sharing, these things really assist a lot. So let's skip that. Okay, then the last one for Maritzburg, very important is looking at in the morning and afternoon peaks. Close to, or if not beyond 50% of the traffic is local traffic. So we looked at the solution here of these parallel distribution CD road configuration between the interchanges. So between New England Road, coming from the Durban side, having a parallel road system with the M3. So where local traffic users wanting to get on, they use the CD road to get on and off different interchanges, and then that gets back. So that CD road then ties in back to Sanctuary. And then the future ring road ties in, you'll see at that location. So this is the package which is last to come on, because it took us quite a while to get what we needed to do here in terms of the upgrade. Then the PMB ring road, this briefly, there's like 14 routes we've looked at here. And again, as you'll see here from this curvilinear alignment on plan, and the very steep gradients, quite high super elevations, as you'll see here. And even if with that super elevation, that gradient plus the super elevation we have, our resulting crossfalls is substantially large, resulting in a lot of heavy vehicles losing loads around, some of these sharp curves. So this is just one of the routes, the shorter routes that, we've sort of shortlisted as one of the preferred, but we still try public participation going through it and engage the public on it before, we finalize our environmental process to get a decision. So just on progress, the thing I'm doing for time, just on progress. So I think it's just 3 packages as I shared early on, we under construction. So this is the first one, Mohammed Parak, our project manager, Cato Ridge Dardanelles. It's over 7 kilometers in length, 6 structures, 1.4 billion as the contract sum that was awarded. We commenced in April, it's 51-month duration, and then design's complete. So we're really now in the construction phase, and it's still really early days as we commence. But those that travel on the N3 will see work that started there. Oh, now I see it's frozen. Okay, so I think briefly on the scope, it's currently 2 lanes per direction. We accommodate traffic through contraflow. I'll share a slide with you on what the plan is there. Then widening from 2 lanes to 4 lanes per direction. Looking at vertical correction in terms of vertical alignment in some of the sections, and then the interchanges, Camperdown interchange. Really, we've looked at long term what's required, and there's a layout showing that. And then these various structures, mainly widenings, and then obviously services is quite a critical issue. I mean, we think of all types of services, the NMPP line, the various fiber lines, telecom, Eskom. So that's one of the key issues and challenges even currently with these different projects we're having in terms of relocations and delays we're experiencing. So this is just a more recent picture of some of the work. So currently you'll see just some clearing and grubbing taking place. Some initial work we had to do because obviously the N3 was in dire need of some maintenance work. So some of the initial work is to do some patching, which is just some of the initial work that took place. That did result in some delays, although this package particularly we did work at night. You'll see the R103, we also did some work on the R103 because that's part of the traffic management plan is to use the R103 as alternative route. Here again, just some pictures. This is what we're looking at to widen, close up the median, widen on the inside and then widen on the outside. And this is just showing you then what the future N3 would look like with the median, with the street freeway lighting, and then what that cross section would look like. This is some work. I said this work for the patch work, and we all did at night to limit the impact on traffic. And then you'll see some of the widening taking place. Camperdown, as I said early on, currently there's no real operation challenges with the interchange. So we looked at future upgrading. As I said, it was a long-term plan we had to look at. So this is what really the future upgrade would look like. We took into account what future developments in the area, looked at the spatial development plan of the municipality and a lot of the development taking place on the southern side. So that's how we've come up with the layout. And again, what we did here is that just because in future, whenever this interchange happens, that we need to come and construct a central median pier. So what we do now when we construct the concrete barrier is to pile and construct, undertake the piling now. So in future, it doesn't become a major restriction, for that pile work. So we just do the piling work. And so in future, when we upgrade, then it's just a matter of constructing that median pier because that restriction would have been removed for the piling. Okay, these are just some of the structure widenings, the rail bridge. A big major restriction here is Transnet indicated for the entire year we will only be allowed a week. Again, this is the main line as I shared from that earlier slide between Gauteng and KZN, a week to do this work. So again, very critical how we program it to do that work. Okay, so again on this package, one of the issues is the clay in one of the sections, as you'll see, really quite thick, deep-seated clay layer. And we know the challenges with settlement of the clay, and so some of what we need to do as really engineering first and ground engineering to make sure we don't have future settlements. These are just some quantities on this package. As again, you can see very, very large quantities for this section of the N3. The next one, Dardanelles Linfield. Connie Roo is our project manager. This was a few months ahead of the other two, starting in January, so it's slightly ahead of the others. And you can see similarly what the details are of that package. Similarly, traffic accommodation, and very similarly in terms of the approach for widening. You construct initial widening, you move traffic over, and so forth. The big one here is this new upgrade to Dardanelles interchange. It's a major challenge currently with the height restriction we have and damage to that overhead bridge. So we're looking at regrading the N3 and creating some new ramps there as well. There, exactly. So there's the interchange. That's the structure. So, and what you'll see, this is a picture looking back towards Durban, creating a new. So you've got a loop ramp currently coming to a point. And there's major planned developments in this area as well in terms of the planning, creating a new access and a new directional interchange ramp, with a structure right across this area. Again, there's some information. There's the information of that structure. But again, I think with time, I'll skip these. I mean, it's fairly straightforward structures. This is a link from the N3 Dardanelles interchange back to the R56. So this is P338. Again, this is quite a key link because for traffic wanting to hit South Coast, this is a link that links you from the N3 to the R56 down to Mzimkhulu, back to the N3. Back to the N2 South. So, and this is again a strategic link, and why important that we look at this the work required here. These are again some structures and the widening required. These are the different underpasses. Again, quantities, very large quantities, as you'll see. Then the third one is Linfield Ashburton. So this is from Linfield interchange just to east of Ashburton, so it excludes the Ashburton interchange. Just over 5 kilometers, again just over $1 billion, 40-month construction, and again just starting off. We've already picked up some challenges here with service relocations and delays we've experienced, and so forth. So yeah, so again, this is just giving you some detail of the lanes we require. Here, again, traveling from Ashburton southbound, we climb up the hill after the dip, just after Ashburton, climbing up towards Linfield interchange. So we need 5 lanes going south and then 4 lanes coming, 4 lanes coming back towards Maritzburg. Again, this is, as I said earlier, one of the first packages, then with the concrete pavement. You'll see the thickness stay 250, 250 thick concrete pavement. And then similarly, some structures need widening. And on all of these packages, we need these either cut or full retaining walls, so these mechanically stabilized earth walls, or concrete in situ walls, and so forth, Gabion walls as well. Again, this is just initial work. This is looking back towards Durban. Some clearing and grubbing taking place, and then there's the temporary concrete barrier put in place. I think with contract coordination, this is going to be a real challenge, as I shared with you in the earlier slide with the programming. How we're going to really look at coordination of the program with all of these back-to-back contracts, and you can understand the impact of each of these packages on each other, mainly around traffic accommodation, the issue around signage, issue around the materials management. So you can see again, as I said here, traffic, one of the key issues, to look at how we look at the traffic management, and the issue of accidents. You'll see one of the key issues we brought in here is on all these packages having dedicated tow facilities 24/7. So if there's an incident, trying to get that vehicle off the road ASAP, also allowing for emergency vehicles access points. We've got quite an IMS, also an IMS program as part of the whole traffic management plan. The materials demand required and the mix of materials, being shared between packages, environmental, wetland areas, trying to avoid those, the issue around social, the requirements there, and stakeholder engagement, health and safety, very key for these very large projects, and what's required. As I said, civil relocation or service relocation, one of the key issues, and land acquisition is still picking up some challenges in some of the areas with access. Just on the traffic management side, this is the way of the time. just to share what the plan is. So this is again, just briefly. So this is a typical cross section. So that's going northbound. This is coming southbound towards Durban. So this is again on that section between Ashburton and Linfield, where currently it is 3 lanes, 2 lanes plus the climbing lane. The intention is to temporarily widen, as you'll see there, and also similarly widen on the inside median side there, and then still accommodate the existing northbound carrier traffic. Then what we do is then move all the traffic onto the widened southbound carriageway. We'll have full access on the northbound, and then is to construct that, and that's what gives us, the advantage of full accessibility, and in terms of the contractors getting there to undertake what they need to do unrestricted. When I say unrestricted, just in terms of that, but obviously getting access to these areas will still be quite a challenge. So then what we do once that's upgraded, we move the traffic back onto the new widened northbound, and similarly then widen the southbound. And then you'll see a typical cross section again here, having 4 lanes northbound and then 5 lanes southbound, because we originally had a climbing lane and we still needed that. Okay, very key is this whole traffic management plan for the N2 and N3. So this is just showing you some of the alternative routes, for that we've looked at. We signed an agreement with the KZN DOT and looking to do something similar with the eThekwini. So, we've agreed that we'll go and fix up some of these alternative routes in terms of making sure, the road condition is acceptable for vehicles to use it as alternative in terms of road safety, signage, guardrails, opening up some areas where it's restricted on curves and so forth. So we've already done some of that work on these 3 packages on some of those areas. So we'll continue, on the other areas as we get once those packages commence. Materials management, again, very busy, but maybe just to share on this slide is that what we've looked at on the N3 corridor is where are various possible alternative sources. So we did an initial geotech investigation, looking jointly at various commercial sources and new sources that we could look at opening. And eventually with all of these, we tried to balance commercial, and eventually we opened up just the one here at Linfield. We call it RCL9. It's a property we've purchased from Rainbow Properties, and the intention is to develop that into a full quarry. So this is again just a strip match showing where these different areas we've looked at. And also we need to look at, as I said earlier, economies of scale. Again, a slide with a lot of numbers, but this is just showing you overall quantities required on the different packages and how we try to balance. For example, here looking at one of the quarries, we want to open possibly look at opening versus a package and that particular area. And similarly, as we go along the N3, so this is here RCL9 is our quarry contract, and that's servicing a few of 5 of these packages, and then the other ones we're balancing jointly with commercial. So these again just seeing where we are with quantities and so forth. And there's another slide here, so that's similar. This continues in terms of aggregate demand, and yeah, I think here is maybe critical. So overall, you'll see over 3 million cubes of fill. You see for the cement treated layers what's required, and also for the various other, gravel and layers aggregates required for various other types of layers we need for these N3. So yeah, so some of these, we used as the basis of how we put together the quarry contract. This is just a layout of where the quarry will be, or where it will be sited. So we had to go through also a process to get approval through DMR. And so this shows you the layout. We came up with stockpiling areas, the crushing area, allowing positions for where one of the contracts can establish and so forth. The SMME participation. So these are just the 3 existing contracts and where we are currently with it. Again, these large contracts. The earliest slide I indicated our estimate for the N3 is in the order of 22 billion. So if you take the minimum legislated 30%, you quickly see just for subcontracting in excess of 6 billion. just subcontracting for this minimum 30%. And it's not to say that's all that will happen with subcontracting. You know, contractors are also looking beyond the 30% to still use, you know, it just makes economic sense to look at other opportunities using, you know, local suppliers and contractors in the area. So, so a lot more, you know, will be spent on subcontracting. Yeah, again, very busy slide, but what to share here with stakeholder participation. So these are just showing you the different packages of the N3, having our contractors, our consultants, and on each of them, the appointment of a project liaison officer. So you'll see on each of the packages, that's the plan. And then together with that, we formed a project liaison committee for this entire N3 program. And we'll do similar, or we've done similarly for the N2, having stakeholder support, supporting our program managers. So we've got an N3 program manager and similarly an N2 program manager providing support, and internally with our internal stakeholder colleagues then providing support to the entire team. So that's how we intend. I mean, stakeholder challenges are really, you know, something that's happened you know, in recent times. And we've always said, you know, beside the technical challenges on these projects, and I suppose any other project we have in terms of our civil contracts, I think stakeholder management is really one of the key drivers, what really is going to make projects, and already making what makes projects, you know, fail and what makes projects success. So, you know, while the team concentrates on all the technical aspects, and maybe also something, you know, for consideration in our programs at undergrad level and so forth, is to look at this aspect of on the social aspects and how we engage communities and stakeholders that have you know, have interest in civil engineering projects. The other site is at Camperdown, RCL1. Similarly, we've purchased a property from Rainbow Properties, and the plan is to again similarly try and have establishments for our contractors. So on this site, or two of the packages, the contractors are using this as establishment. We're having a training facility there, and then the temporary barrier contract is also in one of the areas that we've allocated for that. Again, similarly delayed with Pluma process in terms of access and what we can and cannot do. This is what that area looks like now. This is one of the recent pictures. Okay, then just on the N2 briefly, I know I've got a few minutes left. Just on the N2, again, similarly, I think here, sharing coming from the north, coming towards Ibikluta, towards Durban, you can see how the traffic then picks up. And as you get King Shaka, Umhloti, and again, exponentially up to a peak. And again, this is a few years, so it's now about 135,000 vehicles at Ibikluta. And then similarly, how it exponentially decreases. So, I mean, that's telling us there's a lot of movement between interchanges with local, you know, commuter traffic in this specific area, as what we can see. Again, we have the mix of light and heavy vehicles, as you'll see from there, although not in terms of heavy daily volumes and lower than the N3 on sections, except, you know, just there at the Ibikluta portion. Again, this is just layout of the N2, showing you. So it's really from Toti to Umhloti, where the different packages are. Again, similarly, and again, those of us that live in eThekwini or travel that area know of the challenges we have with the traffic volumes, morning, afternoon peak. But again, I think generally over the entire day, there's traffic. This is just a slide. This is the N2. Unfortunately, this was some issues we had two particular periods of time when the N2 was flooded. The south there, Isipingo, and this is actually the northbound. That's the southbound, and also again we did quite a detailed flood study now, looking at the issues, what we need. It's a very flat area, and how to try and drain this area so that, you know, we try and get the water out when we have some of these peak or heavy downpours occurring. These are just the layout of the projects. These are again similarly to the N2 or N3, there's some packages, critical, like Higginson is critical because we're looking, or Transnet eThekwini is looking at a new access, a second access to the port. So this is critical in terms of coming up, to try and allow free flow traffic. What it looks like in future, this is again phased approach. We're looking, this is an ultimate versus a short-term solution. We're still trying to investigate further. Edwin Swale, so this is a critical link on this entire corridor because it provides the link of freight. So either, just trying to get my bearings here. So that's the M7 going into, yeah, so that's the N2 north-south, that's the M7. Yeah, so critical port is on that side. So this is the current, access into the port. So a lot of heavies go up the M7 either, or go up the N2 and down into EB Clutter. So it's really critical, looking at free flow. So either traffic coming from the M7, N3 coming into the port, going through, or for the future access, second access going south. And then similarly wanting to go up north. Similarly, we've got a major issue currently also with passenger vehicles in the morning, afternoon period, queuing up, wanting to go west. So again, a very similar directional free flow interchange. The two critical structures you see in dark blue here, again, in terms of size, really major structures, similar if not bigger than Amgeni interchange. In terms of the incrementally launch, we've also now looked at these movable scaffold system. So either, sort of up, top bottom supported, or from the bottom supported up type of approach. So this is just part of the systems that these contractors needed to tender as part of the scheme. So this tender has closed, and we're busy with the evaluation with that. Again, this is just a program. Maybe what you share here in blue is the 3 critical packages. So Kwamashu, Amshloti already awarded. Edwin Swales, 2 Amgeni, including EB Clutter, as I said, under evaluation, and we're hoping shortly in the next month or so to award and appoint those. So these 3, would commence. But as I said, from mid next year onwards, these packages in orange, some of those then will come online, as you see June, mid next year. So again, similarly, as you see from the program, if you take it, from around there, you'll see a number of them under construction. Then lastly, I think just on skills development, and I know this is also one of the pre-questions that was raised. So again, it's really key for us and an opportunity, and not to say we don't do it on all our other SANRAL contracts. I mean, skills development is one of the key things for us as a performance indicator, and what we also need to do in terms of the industry and upskill. And one of the key challenges, I suppose, currently is the unemployment, especially of the youth. And I saw some frightening stats the other day, over 64%, unemployment in that particular age category. So in terms of our SANRAL contracts, overall, on the CapEx work we do, generally we allow a contract skills development goal. This is in line with CIDB Gazette in terms of skilling the industry. So we allow a 0.25% of the contract sum set aside for skills development. You see within that, a contractor needs to come up with a program with these 4 methods of the skill development program. Again, looking at structured workplace learning, and these are for the targeted enterprises as well as for the targeted labor. And then looking at the trained artisans from the FET, again, with the local labor and targeted enterprise. Then method 3 is for University of Technology graduates, P1, P2. And credits required there, and then the last one is obviously those university candidates requiring for registration. So you can see, and not one of these, as you see, they can contribute more than 75%. So again, with these current 3 packages, these are being developed, and I think one of the contractors shared with us, and it looks very promising. What will be taking place. And then maybe this one again, a very, very busy slide. Again, I just took it for the N3, what's intended. Again, with all our packages, with the contractors and consultants, what we're looking at doing through the consultant supervision team, appointing one of the key staff there, looking at the CPG contract participation goal program of the contractors for the targeted small contractors. But together with that, then we'll be managing this whole skills development program for the graduate program. So that again very busy, but you'll see in this first one here, it's again looking at the program for the interns, for the P1, P2s, and quite a large number. We're looking at, 10, at least 10 of these candidates and beyond, and rotating these every year, 12 to 15 months, and these are across all these packages. And then similarly with the our internal program we have through our candidate academy in Port Elizabeth, where our graduates go through the design program there at the academy, and then we put them on our sites for the training they required for the professional registration. But together with this, then that then tying in with the CSDG of the contractors. So these are just our graduate candidates from our academy, but these will be supplemented then with candidates through the CSDG plan. And then lastly, with the artisans, the FEDs, similarly, then that's part of the FET program. So overall, you'll see, and this is again, you can't see the numbers, but if you look at the entry over the program, overall, just the interns, in the order of 500 to 600 of them, and if you look at adding the end-to-end entry, we can get well over 1,000 of these opportunities created for the youth and for the dire need of those that require the training. Okay, so yeah, I think that's just the final slide. So yeah, I think thank you, and thanks SAICE for that opportunity. Thank you.
Ravi, do you want to go back to your quick video and we'll watch that while we get ourselves ready to handle the Q&A, and then Tabaling starts to line up the polls that you requested.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. Let me do that quickly.
Now, those of you that are in the session, please don't leave. There are a few questions relating to these work packages that Ronnie has asked us to poll you on. We would appreciate your participation, and we will bring up the first few questions as soon as the video that Ravi's about to share with us ends. We've noted the questions in the chat box and those submitted in advance that Ravi hasn't answered, and we will run through those time permitting. I don't think Ravi is in a hurry for his dinner tonight, so we'll take as long as we need to get finished. Thanks, Ravi. When you're ready, you can go.
Let me just try and find it. I don't know why I can't seem to find it here, but yeah, there you go. Right, Tom, you let me know if plays that side, eh? Okay.
And not yet. Is the hyperlink active, Ronnie? Ravi?
Tom?
I say, is the hyperlink active for the video?
See it, Tom?
No, we can't see it. We can still just see the slide.
Playing on my side.
Now you've got to change your share screen, Ronnie. Ravi, you've got to change your share screen.
Okay, Tom.
So go out of share screen from presentation and select the video share screen.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, okay. There you go. Okay, let me just start it again.
We can see it, Ravi, so when you're ready, play again.
You see it, Tom?
We can see it, we just need some sound.
Perfect.
There's no sound, Ravi. Still no sound?
Sorry, Ravi, if you go to that icon where you share, when you click there at the top, you'll see it says include computer sound. So you just need to click on that box, and then it'll allow for the sound on your computer for us to hear it.
Sorry, Karabo, sorry, just repeat that. So where do I go?
Where you go share
If
screen.
you go to share screen, that icon where you share your screen, at the top you'll see it says include computer sound.
Okay, let me see again.
Must switch that on,
So
Ravi.
just go to the icon that for sharing,
Shared, right?
and then at the top you'll see
Oh,
include
yes.
computer
Okay.
sound. Yeah, and then you can share.
Okay, thanks. All right, let me start it again. Sorry about that.
And money. SANRAL makes the notable difference in our lives by transforming our time into adventures. Just how we alter our lives for adventure, we at SANRAL need to accommodate for those adventures. SANRAL's N3 upgrade between the Port of Durban and the newly
Sorry, Ravi, we've lost. You've gone out of share. I don't know if somebody else. We've lost the video.
Oh, sorry, Tom. I don't know why it's doing that.
I think someone tried to override and share at the same time. So if everyone can just stay on mute and keep your mics off and not share, then you can try it one more time, Ravi.
Okay.
SANRAL makes the notable difference in our lives by transforming our time into adventures. Just how we alter our lives for adventure, we at SANRAL need to accommodate for those adventures. SANRAL's N3 upgrade between the Port of Durban and the newly developed Tambo Springs Inland Port between Heidelberg and Johannesburg experience high levels of users. The N3 upgrades not only affect commuters, but industries and business that work hard to contribute to the future of us fellow South Africans. Let's take a look at these upgrades as we start in Durban, the city of endless summer. We are here at the Durban's port that connects Johannesburg via the N3. This road is responsible for the economic well-being of our neighbours in East and Southern Africa, as the N3 is used by South Africa's Road Freight Association members, alongside private and other commercial commuters. All of this contributes to strategic construction of the N3 to contribute to an infrastructure that solves congested traffic that helps us get back to our adventures much quicker. Upon leaving the main port access gate, the surrounding road leads to the M7 Solomon Mashlangu used to enter and exit the Durban port on the N2 interchange. Before reaching the N3's Marion Hill Toll Plaza, we face 6 interchanges, namely the so-called Spaghetti Interchange of EB Klutter, Mgeni Interchange, Mount Edgecombe Interchange, the N2 between Mgeni and Mount Edgecombe Interchange, the N3 M13 Interchange at Paradise Valley, the M7 or N3 Interchange. Additionally, the upgrades solve bottlenecks between Durban and Pietermaritzburg and Van Rieman's Pass. The N3 upgrade will boast with an 8-lane freeway that is an 84-kilometer stretch for our easy and effective travelling. SANRAL's collaborations with the City of eThekwini and Transnet National Ports Authority are well underway, which contributes positively to address the challenges of pricing, operations and infrastructure that connects the Durban port to the Tambo Springs Inland Port, which is a major destination and departure point for container freight operations. Positive relations for road upgrades are essential for efficiency and to reduce the time spent of construction. The necessity of the N3 upgrade is to accommodate the growing economy of South Africa. On a daily basis, the N3's traffic consists of a minimum of 40,000 vehicles a day. With 40 million tons of freight per annum, the N3's upgrade needs to withstand this and more due to the expected increase of traffic of more than an additional 600,000 freighted containers, which lead to 300,000 road trips. Durban needs to be ready, as does the N3. If the N3 is not upgraded, the loss we as South Africans will face is 800 million rands per annum, meaning that it costs the country approximately 250,000 rands an hour. That means it is an average of 18 South Africans each hour that is negatively impacted. Therefore, the N3 is not just a road. It is a binding symbol of empowerment. The SANRAL N3 upgrade is beyond improving roads, but it is to drive our economy and be right on time to place South Africa's entrepreneurial spirit on the map.
Thanks, Ravi. That was great. In Tabaling, can you post the poll for us, please? And then we'll leap into the questions for Ravi. Honest answers, please. Ravi, the poll answers are up in the chat box if you're keeping an eye on the chat. There are just on 90 people in the session tonight, so we're a long way off all of the votes. At the moment, it's all positive. The naysayers haven't started voting yet or have declined. We don't have a none of the above option. This is the easiest multiple choice question that a student will ever have to undertake. Okay, let's let it run for a few more seconds in Tabaling before you load the next one. Okay, a couple more seconds, everybody, please vote. Okay, go on. Tabaling, if you can load the next poll, please. Okay, so the next one is should SANRAL have left the urban freeways to continue operating at their current conditions to force motorists to use public transport? Question is, if they'd left it, and do you think it would have forced people to use public transport or not? Please vote. Okay, again, an overwhelming no, Ravi, from the votes. There's one condescending vote or two at the moment. Majority of people believe that SANRAL has done the right thing by getting on and fixing the problem. I guess it's probably because people wouldn't have moved to public transport in any case, even if you'd done nothing.
Sure, thanks, John, for that, yeah.
Okay, so we'll run the other two questions a bit later. Ravi, if I can start off with the questions that we've received. Let's deal with those that you didn't answer in your presentation. The first one is more of a personal question for you, is what is the highlight for you on working on such large mega projects?
Yeah, no, thanks, Tom. I think, yeah, I suppose, as I've been saying, to our team, firstly, we don't get a scale of these things. It's another project, and we go through the design phase and so forth. I think, once we get to the draft tender documents and then understand the volume in terms of quantities, and then once physical work starts, we realize the magnitude. So I think for me, it's firstly, from a team perspective, and as I said early on, I think as an industry, thus far where we've come with our consultants and all the coordination we've had, it's been really great, with the different consulting teams. And then I think from SANRAL's team itself, the guys really stood up in terms of, when we needed to, from our program managers to our specialists and to our project managers and all the others that, provide that support to the team. So yeah, I think that was a really big highlight for me, as a team effort, getting these large-scale projects out, especially some of them when we were really restricted time-wise and really trying to push the boundaries and limits to work all those additional hours and so forth, so that we can really show that we're capable of putting these large-scale projects out. Thanks.
Thanks, Ravi. The next one is relating to the industry that, despite having weathered the post-World Cup recession, for want of a better word, the construction industry is still facing challenges, both old and new, in terms of moving forward as an industry. Rising material and labor costs, issues with labor itself, increased competition and shrinking profit margins are some of the challenges construction firms face. How do you consider that as a director in design and construction for SANRAL? I don't think you can tell us how to solve the construction industry's woes, but you can at least contribute to some of the solutions.
Yeah, no, sure, Tom. Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid and pertinent question, especially where we're in now. And I think, we were in the last few years, what's really happened to the industry, not a lot of work that was put out, a lot of skills gaps, within the industry, some of the skills leaving the country and so forth. So, and as I said before, even with all the challenges we have as an industry, I think, and it's more especially from a construction fraternity as well, that if you look at what we've achieved, in KZN with the Umgeni interchange, Mount Edgecombe, I think as an industry we should really be proud of what we're able to produce as an industry. But saying that, I think what happened in the last few years, and still having majority, I mean, we've had some of the big contractors and the challenges they've had with business rescue and so forth, and we're still hoping some of them still come through it. But still, those guys weathered the storm. And what we're seeing now with these big, large tenders, the guys still really keen, putting the bids through, and so forth. And I know one of the big issues was, is industry ready for so large projects, and all within a very confined and constrained period of time? And even the discussions we've taken at various levels, from suppliers, from laboratories, from the consultants as well in the supervision stages, and contractors, I mean, they all geared up for it. And even if it means we have to go and bring back some of the skilled staff from overseas, I mean, contractors are still willing to do that. And again, I think it just shows as an industry that, we always they're up for the challenge. And yeah, I think moving forward, and hopefully with government's infrastructure rollout, Tom, as well, and the billions that are going to be there over the next number of years, I'm hoping, I think we're all hoping as an industry that we will be quite a long time before we have to go through the same dip we had in the last few years. So yeah, I'm hoping and our skills plan and so forth, it's all really going to contribute as an industry, and we're really going to attract more people to our industry. Thanks.
Thanks, Ravi. Then you've answered the question regarding internships and the provision for, I think you mentioned a figure of about 600 over the various projects, but added to that question is, how does a person go about getting into the program when they are still a student who is funded by NSFAS? So they are currently studying. What do they have to do, or how do they go about applying to be considered once they have finished the theoretical component of their qualification?
Yeah, so what we'll do, Tom, we generally, these, to our HR, they submit their CVs and so forth, and we normally get a letter of backing from the actual University of Technology. So perhaps, yeah, I can maybe post or share the detail, Tom, and yeah, so maybe then those students can make contact with us. So as I said, the one aspect is directly to SANRAL and our program we have, but again, through the different contracts and the contractors setting up the CSDG, and then through that and through our public liaison committee, trying to get students on board as well. But perhaps I'll separately share with you, and then maybe that can be shared with the students.
Okay, that'll be great. And in the last pre-session question, what is SANRAL doing to bridge the gap of experience and gender inequality in the projects within the country? And then just a qualification, many times we see job adverts wanting highly experienced engineers, technicians, technologists, which results in young graduates being overlooked. Because in previous years, construction was a male-dominated field, and most of the people with required experience are males, therefore young female technicians and or engineers and technologists are often not given a chance to gain enough experience.
Yeah, again, very pertinent question, Tom. So maybe if I can start firstly, maybe with the female engineers, and we have already identified this. Even recently going through some of these sites, we still seeing that very much male dominated team on the site, and we're definitely making said to the team that if we don't make a contribution and start some way, it won't happen, especially us as the employer. Where we can really contribute in terms of who needs to be on site and so forth. So with the various packages and submissions in terms of staffing, whether it's a consulting team or even part of the contractors team, we've already start making strides there to request when those proposals are put forward, we definitely do want to see female involvement. We may not yet maybe see some of them in some of the senior positions, but saying that we first need to try and thereafter say that we cannot find some of the females in key positions, that we look then even at some of the other lower levels. So this just on the female side. I think on the skills gap and the young graduates, again, I suppose it's twofold. For one, for these large scale projects, we need to have the senior staff with that kind of key experience on these large projects. So that's just the one side. You need those key staff, but over and above that, then you need to have a pool of these younger graduates coming through, so that eventually, because it's been a challenge over the last few years on the, for example, our site engineers, the engineers representative, where they very much senior engineers, already in the 70s, early 70s, and so forth. And we, again, as an industry, and I suppose as us, again, as an employer, need to influence so that we have the younger pool coming through. So what we're doing as well, looking at the other positions, if possible, for some AREs, and even maybe couple some of the assistant engineers on site with the graduates as well, to ensure that we have the skills transfer taking place. Thanks.
Thanks, Ravi. I think statistically across universities currently in civil engineering programs, we're sitting at between 30 and 35% of the students are female. So I'd like to suggest that SANRAL minimally try and reserve about 30 to 35% of those intern positions for females, and then you will certainly be helping the inclusivity agenda. The next question is from Mark Owens. The question is, I'd like to ask what requirements for local content and designation are for these projects, with specific reference to steel in terms of.
And I want to be like spokespersons for the jab. No, you need to get vaccinated. Hey, you're irresponsible. Hey, we're saving lives.
Can you please mute your mic and vaccinate offline, please? Sorry, Ravi, can I repeat the question? It was, what is the requirement for local content and designation for these projects, and with specific reference to steel?
Okay, thanks, Tom. So that one, Tom, again, by law, would gazetting of certain of these sectors, including ours. So steel is one of the local content products gazetted, and the requirement is 100% has to be locally produced. So in our requirement for SANRAL contracts, we actually give detail as per DTI on different, whether it's flat plates and the thicknesses, whether it's fencing, whether it's reinforcing steel, structural steel. So yeah, it has to be 100% locally produced, Tom.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to scroll down. Then there's a question. Oops. Sorry, I pushed the wrong button. Like you, Ravi, I've got some technological challenges here. It says, I am in need of experience or an entry-level job in the industry. What should I do in order to place myself in a good position to obtain that chance? I'm not sure whether your question regarding the methodology through your HR to apply. I think this is more about ensuring that either their CV or the way in which they present themselves gives them an advantage.
Yeah. So Tom, again, it is a bit of challenge, and again, I suppose, as I said earlier on, with the really high unemployment rate we have, we've already got quite a large database. So obviously, there's going to be quite a big pool, and it may be that not all of them can be accommodated. So we have to look then in terms of merit, which ones have come first, looking at where the different graduates are in terms of the training requirements, and look at it like that. So yeah, I think it has to be submitted, and then we'll just have to look at the database and then how we try and prioritize what we have currently versus the new ones we will get in.
Okay, so what you are saying is if you haven't already made an application, do so soon, so that if not in the current projects, the rest of the pipeline ones, you may get the chance.
Absolutely, Tom. If the guys all can, then yeah, I think they must do that.
The next question is from Koketso Malinga. There's massive investments in the upgrade of this infrastructure. How do these contracts ensure that A, skills are transferred? I think you partially addressed that. And B, the youth are employed. I don't know if you want to elaborate further, or if you feel you've covered that adequately, Ravi.
No, thanks, Tom. Again, yeah, there's just so much to go through. I mean, there's just so much more we can discuss. The whole issue about what we require on SANRAL contracts, as a targeted enterprise, minimum 30%, and so within that minimum 30% for the enterprises, so these are the SMMEs, that we have a sub requirement in terms, out of that, a minimum percentage for women-owned companies, a minimum percentage for youth-owned companies, military veterans, so all in terms of those designated groups. In terms of the PPPFA regulations, we try to cater for as many of those as possible as subcategories. So that's the one. And then similar for the targeted labor. So for these projects, CapEx projects, minimum 8%. And out of that, that 8%, has to be targeted within local areas that we then define in the contract. And then within that, a minimum 30% for labor is woman-owned, a minimum 30% is youth-owned, and so forth. And definitely the intention is these are minimum percentages where we can accelerate. And as I said, for us, the two critical areas is the woman-owned and the youth, women and youth, is to try and go beyond those minimums. In all our contracts, there is definitely allowances for a bonus for contractors if they go beyond the minimum 30%. So there's definitely incentives, for contractors to try and get beyond these minimum percentages I've shared with you.
Thanks, Ravi. And then the next question is between Linfield Park Interchange and Gladys and Munsey or Murray Road, that's packages J and K. What is the estimated project value on those two segments? Doesn't have to be to the cent, just approximate billions.
So between, sorry, Tom, between Ashburton to New England.
It's J and K, Ravi. That's between Linfield Park Interchange.
Oh, okay.
Lion Park, I think we know it as, and Murray Road. Okay.
So Linfield to Ashburton, I shared that with you because that contract is under construction, and the estimate there is not estimate. The contract awarded is in the order of 1.2, just over 1.2 billion, and then Ashburton to Murray, said the tenders have closed. I mean, publicly, I think those prices were shared publicly, and the price I can't recall, but I think it ranges from about 1.4 billion to about just over 2 billion. So that's the range that that package Ashburton to Murray Road prices have come in at.
So we're looking at 2.5 billion plus for those two segments.
In that order, yeah.
Okay. And then how did and from where did you get the traffic count data for the level of service for the 9.81 kilometer segment? That's those two segments that you showed in that table. Where did the traffic data come from for you to do the level of service calculations?
Oh, okay. So what we do, I mean, again, across our entire SANRAL network, we've got counting stations, CTO, we call them comprehensive toll counting stations. So what we do with that, so like for the N3 at various strategic locations, we've got these counting stations situated. So that's how then we do. Historically, we look, and do back analysis in terms of what was previous forecast and how at what growth rate the traffic grew at, and when we use that to guide us in terms of future projections. So we use historic. but we also take into account other things like potential development in areas, and these now going more to interchanges and so forth, and so that's how we try to look at future forecasting.
Okay, the next question is what innovative design procedures were used? Again, I think this individual must live somewhere along that section because they all relate to packages J and K. What was done that was different or innovative, given in particular the fact that the carriageways are not always at the same level?
Yeah, let me just see. Okay, I think what we did different, maybe on the concrete pavement side is again to increase the labor component. We made it a requirement that the concrete pavement be constructed by hand, and by hand we still then would just need to achieve the minimum riding quality. So in that way, then we increased that minimum 8% to 10% on that package, again to try and increase the labor pool. Other things innovative, we look at, as I said, the pavement surfacing, trying to look at the noise reduction and trying to come up with this bitumen rubber surfacing, twofold, looking at drainage plus at the noise reduction. I'm just trying to think of the others, maybe on the interchange Ashburton. Maybe not innovative, but again, looking at various options of types of interchanges in that area and the constraints we have there, and coming up with a solution that still really works and trying to minimize impact, around that area.
And Ravi, one more question, and then we'll run the last two poll questions. You didn't mention that included in the tenders or these contracts, as far as I know, is also lighting of the carriageways, and if so, what green technology and or solar efficiency in terms of both the road studs and any other technology has been incorporated into the projects?
Okay, thanks, Tom. Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that. And again, yeah, it's just there's just so much things to share. Definitely lighting. So the intention, both N2 and N3, in terms of freeway lighting, that we're going to have median lighting right through from Durban to Pietermaritzburg. Median lighting in majority, in some areas where there are challenges, is then to have outside lighting. Interchanges similarly also to be lit. So generally, the plan is having a lighting system, a light management system, so that the lighting range varies in terms of volumes of traffic. So for example, say around 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., where there's very low volumes of traffic. In terms of the lighting management system, then the lighting levels will be reduced, and then with the volumes pick up, then it would increase. So that's just a one on the lighting system and trying to be more efficient there. The second one is just on the type of luminaire as well, going for the LED luminaires, which obviously take much lesser power and provide much more light. So that's the other one. We have looked at the option of looking at these farms for trying to provide alternative sources, whether it's wind or whether it's solar, and the whole cost benefit. Unfortunately, we looked at it; it just doesn't work out for us for this particular one. But we did say we'll try and even do a trial, perhaps, to look into that. So I think this is something the team would look into in terms of this, the lighting, and trying to make it more sustainable. I think on the road studs itself, generally, we're going for road studs that gives us the life we require. We did say for the during construction, because generally I think with reflectivity, it's performance based now, so that we're trying to get at least over the first 2-3 years a minimum reflectivity, so we won't see the issues immediately after construction complete. A few months later we lose reflectivity, so that's the one. But I think the other is in terms of LED road studs during traffic accommodation and some of these critical areas, perhaps over some of the sharp curves. Just trying to highlight to the motorist, to be aware of some of the chicanes and so forth, is definitely look at the LED studs and these flashing studs. And yeah, I think some of these existing packages, the intention is to already start to use them there.
Okay, thanks, Ravi. And Tabaling, can you load the next or the last two poll questions for us, please? Okay, so the next one, which is question 5, poll 5, Can road space be shared between passenger and freight vehicles without affecting level of service? Again, very easy multiple choice questions, yes or no. A little bit more even distribution this time, Ravi.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I see that.
A slight erring in favor, 2/3 to a third in no.
That's interesting, yeah.
I think everybody knows that the minute you introduce large freight vehicles with light vehicles, there is some level of service deterioration, even with 4 lanes or 6 lanes in each direction. So.
Yeah. And the challenge, Tom, is what's our biggest concern is, the more lanes we put, and what we're seeing already, even on the 3-lane sections, where heavy vehicles are going right across all 3 lanes, yet there's signs limiting them. So
that's not going to change until you police and enforce it.
Absolutely.
In situ tolling of heavy vehicles in lanes 4, 5, and 6 will solve your problem.
So we're talking to RTI there, Tom. So yeah, we're hoping something comes of that. Otherwise, yeah, that is quite a concern.
And Tabaling, load the next one for us, please. Okay, the next one is, are there too many freight vehicles on our roads? I think that would indicate that if there are, they should be on the rail. But let's see how you respond. We're not sure how many trucking companies are in the session, but you are free to say no. Okay, this time, Ravi, the margin of error is more in favor of the yeses. There are too many freight vehicles on the road. I think one of the infrastructure initiatives of government is to increase or improve the rail freight service, both from an efficiency and a cost perspective. So maybe we will see a decline in road freight over time. Yeah,
and again, Tom, jointly, engaging with Transnet for SIP2, and they definitely got new strategies they're looking at and so forth, trying to also get the private sector more involved on the rail side. And I think there may be initiatives there getting private sector where then there'll definitely be some attraction then towards rail.
Okay, while the rest of those polls are coming in, and I think you've hopefully got the answers that you were looking for, there was a request, Ravi, if you could share the link for the video in the chat. That video that you played, I'm not sure if it's just a straight YouTube video or if it's a SANRAL limited video, but if you can copy and paste that link that you had in your slideshow into the chat so that those that would like to review the video can do so, if that's possible.
Yeah, so
scrolling up for some more questions.
Yeah, Tom, so that one currently is off my, unfortunately not, but what we'll do, we'll just check with our communication team. If somehow we can put it on YouTube, and then I will then put it onto the chat.
You just notify Tabaling or Mishka, they can announce it on the various SAICE platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., that it's there and what the, or even provide the link to it. That would be great. The next question is from Tulani. He wants to know, good day, SANRAL. I wish to ask, how have you mitigated the challenge of having designs approved 10 years ago and doing construction after 10 years of design approval? I'm asking this because I read about, and then he unfortunately ends the question, with respect to traffic growth since the designs. I think you did allude to that, Ravi, but if you'd like to just explain what you did in terms of reviewing those designs.
Yeah, so Tom, yeah, I think that's a great question. So as I said, we started 2008, 2009, and we first, looked at and we appointed a firm specifically to look at concept and prelim design based originally with those growths we had, and then subsequently, and then we came up with a prelim design scheme. And then subsequently, 2015, 2016, we then put out all these tenders for consultants for the review and then the detailed design packages. So what came through with the reviews, definitely we had to go back and then relook at some of what was put forward as prelim design, and then relooking at where we were with growths and so forth. So So it had an influence where then some of what was originally proposed we had to then definitely look at again, resulting in revised some of these designs being revised, and rightfully so, because with the growth rates and so forth and other things changing along the corridor, we had to relook at some of these things. So that's what we eventually did. So with the consultants we had appointed for the review and detailed design, then they took that finally then into the construction phase, which we were in, where we in now on some of the packages.
Okay, then Ravi, I know we're running long over our time. If you don't mind, one or two more questions.
Yep.
How are the critical packages awarded to ensure quality of delivery? Would SANRAL favour more experienced companies when receiving tender bids?
So generally what happens and how it works on our SANRAL tenders, we have minimum requirements to be met, and one of it is obviously like previous experience and key staff. So generally, a contracts director, contracts manager, and then a construction manager, generally those are the three key staff. They need to be have certain minimum registration. They need to have so many years minimum years experience, and have worked on projects into similar scope that what that particular tender is out for. And then similarly, we look at the experience of the company. What we also require is previous performance rating on projects they've completed. So if they've given us 3 projects we require to have been done in the last number of years, we require those employers to give us so there's a CIDB gazetted performance requirement on projects completed. Then we request those completed forms, and we need them to score a minimum value for them then to be considered. So if they give us projects where they don't score that minimum in terms of performance, then they become disqualified. So that's how we look at it in terms of that. In terms of financial, we also look at a minimum requirement in terms of project size, where then the banks need to indicate what they have available as starting off contracts that's available to these contracts. So it's sort of like a mini due diligence we do, but through a submission of a tender submission. Over and above that, Tom, if we feel based on the type of project we still need to do a separate due diligence, then we would go ahead and appoint an independent firm to undertake a separate due diligence, looking at technical compliance, resource availability, financials, and a whole lot of other things we would look at.
Okay, then linked to that, what opportunities are there for civil companies with a CIDB rating grading of 1 CE to have work or even components of the work within these particular projects?
Okay, so yeah, so again, the large projects all would be advertised for 9 CE contractors. So what we do as part of that minimum 30% for targeted enterprises, those are generally made up of CIDB categories 1 to 6. So what we do, we put it as a minimum requirement for CIDB 1 and 2s as a minimum percentage of the contract. So for those small contractors, then similarly for 3 and 4s, 5 and 6s. So what happens is through our project liaison committee and jointly with the contractor, we finalize a database. But although we do have a database over and above that, the contracts, these subcontracts do get advertised on an open platform through our SANRAL website, SMME portal, as well as the local press. And then the different grade contractors can tender, and then that's how they get involved, Tom, on the different packages.
Okay, and then I think the last question for tonight is, with exception of the road users, who are the stakeholders and how are they integrated into the complete life cycle of the project upgrades?
So yeah, so besides, as you say, I mean, the key one is the road user, because we're really upgrading and providing a facility for our road users. Over and above that, the stakeholders can be really involved at different stages. So I think from design stage to public participation, whether you have interest groups wanting to really understand the project better, and we have challenges there, especially engaging them, and where even we have appeals with some certain stakeholder groups and engaging them. So that's just on that side. And then once you get into the construction phase, and I think that's where it's really very large, because there, as I said, you get motorists, concerned about issues around delays. You may have landowners, you could have service owners, you'll have stakeholders like those, as I said, subcontractors wanting to get involved. You could have business forums, you could have other business interest groups. It's very, very large in the construction phase because, of people or organizations wanting to have a direct interest or to be directly involved in the projects or having being impacted by the projects. So yeah, it's very large, including municipalities, the provinces. So, as part of this process, there's just so many platforms we engage on with different stakeholders there. And then once we're in commissioning and the roads open, again, it's ongoing, I suppose, with road users and landowners adjacent to our freeways, and very important as well in terms of the growth and economy. Various developers we engage, and really some of these being very key strategic developments, especially along the N2 and N3 corridors. Up north, Sibaya, South Coast, looking at ASP, this auto park with Toyota, looking along the N3 at Cato Ridge for a new dry port facility, and a new Mall of the West here at Chongweni. So yeah, some of these we also engage at different stages. Thanks.
Okay, Ravi, thank you very much. There are a few other questions which we will handle offline. It's left for me to firstly thank you, Ravi, very much for your willingness, as always, to talk about what I know is your passion, despite, in your case, the no hair situation that it's created in your working career. It's not always easy being a provider of services like national roads, and you take a lot of flack from the public and or other interested stakeholders, but we greatly appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to share the information with us. As discussed with you the other day, it would be great if we can revisit the projects when they are further under the construction regime, maybe in a year to 18 months time, where we can actually show particularly the students some of the actual work that's being undertaken, and I think you've already agreed to that. If I can thank the SAICE team behind the scenes in Tabaling and Mishka for making all the arrangements for the student webinar as per the last time. And to the students in the webinar, if you can make sure that you sign up for our next one, which is on the 30th of September. It's not only limited to students. It was good to see quite a number of members of industry who either are frustrated by the construction or have an interest in what is happening along the N2, N3 corridors. Join us tonight. We will get it validated for CPD. The CPD number for tonight's event has already been posted in the chat box. If you didn't get it, drop me an email or Mishko and Tabaling, and we will greatly provide it for you. It will be on X's website if you have to do a renewal of your registration in the future. The next topic is about ethics. Why is ethics an important DNA? Should it be an important DNA in every engineer? The speaker is Greg Skeen, who is SAICE Growing Forward's ethics champion, and he will share some very valuable insights into why ethics is very important in our industry. There are billions and billions of rands being lost in the construction sector due to corruption and other things across the world. And Greg will bring some very, very interesting statistics and data. So 30th of September, same time, pop it in your diary. And we did ask in the chat for students and or anyone else. We're going to have hopefully 8 of these next year to send us any topics you would like us to include, whether they are project related topics or technical topics, and we will try and oblige. Lastly, Ravi, again, thank you very much for your time and for your insights, and we appreciate the fact that you have done so willingly as always. And I wish everybody a good night. Stay safe and avoid the looters should they be on their roads in the future. Thanks, Ravi, and to everybody, good night. And Tabaling, we'll leave you to just play us out with some music. Thanks, Ravi.
Thank you, Tom.
Tabaling, are you going to play us out with a bit of music quickly?
Just a second, yeah.
Cool. Those that didn't see the holding slide and the videos earlier on, stay in. There's some interesting information communicated through the what Ntabeling's about to share, and then we will log everybody off. Thanks, everybody, and have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
Hello, how's it? Would you like to be an engineer of great integrity? The Engineers Table is here for you, a free platform for engineers to engage online, working closely with the grower graduate aspect of SAICE growing forward. Empower yourselves with the skills of tomorrow and be part of engineering breakthroughs of tomorrow. Join us in sharing insight, engaging with professionals, generating ideas, revolutionizing industries, and creating the future. Let us help you build as you are built. To our platform and engage with hundreds of South Africa's engineers.